At this point, I'm hoping that you can run a basic C++ program, whatever means necessary. That's using either a command line or Eclipse. Either way, that's fine. So from now on, we'll just look at how C++ programs work and not worry about exactly how to compile them. Once again, the easiest way to do this is to use Linux. The live DVD is a good place, or you can install it either on your computer or in a virtual machine. Those are all things that you should know about. As a computer science major, you should know how to do that, and if you don't, definitely I or someone else in the class can show you how to do all of that. So if you have Linux installed, great, that's the way to go. Eclipse is a good thing to learn. Also, the command line is fine too. If you want to do the command line, I'm not going to stop you from doing that. You can use Visual Studio to get started, but you should quickly switch to the Eclipse IDE, just because we're going to be using some standard C++ objects that might not work out that great in Visual Studio. Okay. Definitely play around with a program like this where you declare ints, use cout insertion operator to print out strings, the new line character, you can do that, or ENDL. I used ENDL in the last couple of videos rather than the \n. I just prefer that, looks nicer, I think. But either way, you should be able to use cin to read something from the keyboard into a variable. This is the extraction operator. And in this example, I didn't do this, but in my simple examples, but you can do this, put in an if statement, and this works pretty much like you would expect in Java. So if this were a Java, ignore this, but from here to here, ignoring the couts, basically everything else is Java, just like Java. Keep in mind that Java and C++ both came from C, and so Java has a lot of these features. The if statements look pretty similar. They're pretty simple anyway. Okay, so hopefully you can do a simple if-else statement, and you should see something like this, some kind of output like this. It should, whatever's in the couts should show up. Hello reader, welcome to C++. How many programming languages have you used? You enter a number, and then if you have that if statement, you will get one message or the other. Alright, so hoping you can do that. Definitely it would be a good thing to actually try out right now. Oops, okay. Okay, so let's move on to other topics in C++. Identifiers in C++ work pretty much exactly like in Java. You cannot use keyword like in an if statement. You can't say int if, because if is reserved. It's a reserved word, and so you can't use that as an identifier. So an identifier is a name for variables, for functions, for classes, all of those things, and they have to be different from the reserved words. Keep in mind, like in Java, names are case sensitive, and there are certain identifiers that are valid, and you've probably used them. And the same, I'm going to say that it's the same rules in C++ and Java. I'm pretty sure it's the same. You want to use meaningful names in general, so rather than using I or J or K or X and Y, things like that, you want to say, number of people, or hypotenuse rather than X or Y or Z, things like that. So you want to use meaningful names as much as possible. So what is a variable? A variable is a memory location to store data for a program. That's really what it is. And it's got a name, and so we refer to that memory location by the name of the variable. In C++, C++ is a strongly typed language. You have to declare all data, all variables, before you use it in a program. There are languages where you do not have to do this, and the name is just sort of, the type is inferred from the way it's used. C++, Java, and C are not like that. You have to declare the name and the type before you use it in a program. So, strongly typed language. Simple data types are very similar to Java, except there's one sort of major difference. Let's take a look at some of these. So there's a type called short, also called short int in some systems. This uses 2 bytes of memory. It ranges from negative 32,768 to 32,767. There's no precision. Precision is only for floating point units. Ints are 4 bytes, just like in Java. They go from about negative 2 billion to positive 2 billion. Okay. Longs are also called long ints. They're the same. So now this is different from Java. It's not a major difference, but in Java a long is 8 bytes, whereas in C++ the convention is to say that longs are 4 bytes, because it used to be that ints were 2 bytes and there was no short. So things were different. That's why longs are different in C++ as opposed to Java. So if you take a look at this, longs and ints are the same thing. Okay, so there are some other integer types that we look at, and the major difference we look at it has to do with sign. But let's move on and look at some of the basic types that we will run across the most frequently into. Floats work just like in Java. They're 4 bytes. They're approximately the smallest, or the smallest positive floating point number is 10 to the minus 38. So that's a very, very small number, roughly 0.37 zeros and then a 1. 2, 10 to the power 38, that's 1 followed by 38 zeros. Roughly that gives you 7 digits of precision. Okay. Double is 8 bytes, just like in Java, and the smallest positive number is 10 to the power negative 308. That's really tiny. And then the largest positive number is approximately 10 to the 308. That's 1 followed by 308 zeros. And roughly speaking, this gives you 15 digits of precision. Now, when I say roughly speaking, it really depends on how big your number is. So you want to, and depends on what operations you're doing with that number to figure out exactly what the precision is. Okay. Just like Java has car, so does C++, although the car in C++ is like the byte in Java. So a car is 1 byte, as opposed to, let's just go back, short is 2 bytes, int is 4 bytes, a car is 1 byte in C++. You can also have bool for boolean. In Java, it's spelled out B-O-O-L-E-A-N. It takes up a byte, has only true or false. Same in Java. Okay, that's it. Let's take a look at this. There is this is different from Java. In Java, there is no long double. There in C++ there is, and it's 10 bytes, and it's quite a bit bigger. The range of values that it can have is quite a bit bigger. Okay. So, as it says over here, things may be slightly different on the particular system that you're using, but these days almost all of our systems, like Linux, Mac OS X, Windows, they all run on Linux machines, or on Intel machines, Intel CPUs, or Intel-like CPUs made by AMD. And every once in a while you might run into an ARM processor or some other processor, but most of the time we use Intel, and so these numbers I believe are correct for Intel 64 and 32-bit architectures. Both of them, all of these numbers that you see here, like 2 for short, 4 for int, 4 for long, 4 for float, 8 for double, 10 for long double. Those numbers should be, I believe, right. We can check on that later. So there's ways to check this. Okay. All right, so how do we assign values to a variable or to data? Let's use the assignment statement, and there's many variations of this simple assignment statement. So it's always a good idea to assign a value to a variable in the declaration statement, unlike Java. So this is a very big difference between Java and C++. In C++, if you do not assign a value, that is, if you do not initialize a variable, the value in it is not defined, is not automatically 0. So that's in Java, you can be pretty sure whenever you define a variable, it's always initialized to 0. In C++, this is not guaranteed. Sometimes it might work, sometimes it might not. So let's try that out. I've set up a simple program, and I'm going to create a variable int x. So you don't want to do this. You want to always say int x is equal to, let's say, 10. And I'm going to create a separate variable int y that I do not initialize. So remember, that's not good. And I'm going to print out those two variables. Cout x is x, and so this is slightly different from Java, but once you get used to it, it doesn't bother you. You have to put this insertion operator everywhere. Y, and then end line for a new line. Let's just print out what we see over here. So I'm going to build this, and then I'm going to run. And all right. Alright, it's just starting simple variables program. It should print out this, x is something, and y is. Alright, I have a little bit more work to do. Your program might be working, I hope, if you run into the same problem I am running into. I think I know what the problem is. That's not it. It's not it either. I'm just going to check out everything, make sure I can run this program. If you set up a program using the usual wizard, your program should be working. I am having a few problems, and I might have to wait until the next video to figure out exactly how to print out this message. So I'm hoping by the time you look at the next video, this will be solved.